Nurture the relationship first. Never ask what their MOQ is. What? Why? Why can't I ask them that first? Hi everyone, it's Karen here from Frankie Dean Sustainable Fashion Resources. That's advice that I heard recently from an agency. They said when you first meet a fabric manufacturer, to never ask what the minimum order quantities are. I've reached out and connected with hundreds of suppliers and manufacturers, and I have not had that experience, ever, not once. This can be true for garment manufacturers. However, this has not been my experience for fabric manufacturers. When you design your own fabric, yes, this can be relevant. You want to make sure that you are building some sort of relationship first before you hammer them with the questions of what's your MOQ. You want to have a relationship between designer and manufacturer, much like in garment manufacturing. I say this not to discount someone else's experience and not to speak poorly about fashion agencies or mentors. In fact, the advice that I don't agree with is from a fashion agency that I highly regard and I have a lot of respect for, and I would recommend in a heartbeat. We've just had different experiences. And I believe that going to textile events and reaching out to manufacturers can be overwhelming enough as it is without having to worry about damaging potentially the relationship that you're trying to build in order to get the fabric of your dreams. My experience is that manufacturers are open to sharing their MOQs upon first meeting. This can be a simple difference between the North American market and the European market where I'm located. What does MOQ mean? Minimum order quantity. That means the smallest amount of fabric that that manufacturer or supplier is willing to sell. Now we're talking wholesale, not retail, right? This is wholesale suppliers, fashion designers. You're starting your brand. You do not want to be buying retail unless it is about 70% off. So there are different types of fabric manufacturers and suppliers. The first is the manufacturers that sell large quantities. And we're talking about manufacturers that sell a minimum of 1,000 meters, 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters. They're selling a lot of fabric. These are massive manufacturers and can be incredibly intimidating to approach. Look, if you don't need 1,000 meters for your brand, this isn't the fabric supplier for you. The next type of manufacturer is manufacturers that produce fabric for their clients, and they also produce fabric for their own company to sell to designers that they showcase in their showroom. When they turn the machines on to produce fabric for your brand, their minimum order quantity, 9 times out of 10, is going to be 300 meters. That makes it worth their while to turn the machines on for your brand. Now you can split that 300 meters up. That doesn't mean 300 meters per color or per design or per print. It means you could order 300 meters and you could split it up into 50 meters of turquoise, 50 meters of coral. With that said, if the 300 meters of fabric is too high for your brand, consider sharing or splitting that order with a designer friend that you know and trust. That's how I got started in my first brand. I shadowed a larger brand in their orders. So if they were ordering 700 meters for their company, I would add 50 meters here and there onto their order. What they sell in the showroom can be quite a bit lower. You could be looking at under 100 meters because the fabric is already produced. The third type of fabric supplier out there is a supplier who is purchasing their fabric for their shop from a manufacturer. So they go to the manufacturer that has the really high MOQs and they purchase the fabric to sell at their shop in smaller quantities. This coming Fabric Supplier Friday, I'll share with you a supplier who operates like this. So make sure you hit the bell down below so you don't miss out on that video. So these are suppliers that manufacture their own fabric. What's great about suppliers like this is they're looking after the higher MOQs for you. Now you're going to be paying a little bit more for a smaller amount of fabric, but it's not that much. You're still working within wholesale prices. And in a way, it's a good relationship. This supplier looks after the higher MOQs for you, and you pay a little bit more for smaller quantities of fabric. Those are the 3 different types of suppliers or manufacturers that I can think of that are out there. My belief is to be upfront about your brand's needs and your current requirements. If a manufacturer is offended in some way, that's odd. That's kind of a red flag, in my opinion. My experience is they're happy to tell you. When I connect with manufacturers here in Europe, they're more than happy to tell me what their minimum order quantities are upon that first meeting. If they weren't happy to tell me, then I would just let them know why I'm asking. And if that manufacturer turns you away, walk away. There's lots of other manufacturers out there. Okay, so maybe that manufacturer is your dream manufacturer and you've just always thought about working with them. Okay, so let's nurture that for a minute. If you ask them what their MOQs are, they're a little bit offended by it, or their MOQs are higher, feelings aside, they're just higher than what you anticipated. Ask them how you can best work with them. Now, it might be because they are too backlogged with orders, and that happens a lot. Don't expect your fabric, maybe don't expect that your manufacturer is going to be able to fit you in within the next year. It could take a year and a half. You might be looking ahead a little bit more than you anticipated. But when you ask them how you can best work with them, follow their lead. Follow their lead without losing yourself in the process. And then take their business card and reflect if this is a manufacturer that is a relationship that is going to work best for your brand, right? That's your bottom line there. Is this manufacturer, talking fabric only, is this manufacturer going to be the best choice for your brand for the season that you're working on? Ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask. That's what the vendors are there for. There was a sales rep that I was speaking with one time, and I was asking about their MOQs. I got there early, right at the beginning, so there was time to stand around and talk. Their MOQs were 300 meters, very standard, very normal. And I kind of felt like the vendor was vetting me as much as I was vetting him. He was seeing if I was going to be worth their time as much as I was seeing if they were going to fit my brand's needs. And I did ask if they offered lower MOQs, and the sales rep kind of snubbed me. He kind of started peacocking a little bit and telling me about the big luxury brands that they work for and how they will always take priority over smaller brands like myself. Fashion can be snobby and elitist. You don't have to take that on. And in a way, it interested me because I was learning something. I was learning about how this manufacturer works. So I continued to be curious and ask him questions. And I was sure to compliment him and let him know that he was generous with his time to speak with me. And as we got talking, it turns out that as a sales rep that had worked for this company for over 2 decades, he had been trying to get the company, the manufacturer owners, to modernize what they did, to be able to support smaller brands like myself and like yourself. But he had no success. So the frustrations he had when I initially asked him weren't about me. They were about the frustrations he had in trying to change a company that had the mentality of like when they first started in the 1920s. My point is, I don't know. I don't know why I shared that story. I guess I just don't want you to take it personally if you're feeling snubbed by a sales rep, if you're at a trade show, or if you're feeling a little out of place, because I mean, I felt that too. I remember the first trade show I went to, I was torn between feeling anxious, which was really strange, and also feeling totally overwhelmed with being in a playground. I didn't know where to go next. I didn't know where to go first. I didn't really know how to talk to anybody. I didn't really know how to network. And man, I cruised those aisles for 2 days straight. And the first day it took me 2 hours to actually muster up the words to say hi. I was so shy. I was part, running through a field feeling joy and part feeling green and new and overwhelmed and anxious and like everyone was going to reject me. Silly thoughts, silly thoughts. So this is why I create videos like this. It's to help you. It's to help designers like you get around those feelings, get over those feelings, push through them, feel them, and move on, right? So when you're speaking to vendors, you kind of have to read the room, you have to read the body language. Feel free to ask questions. If they're in their peak hours, don't stand there and talk about all the things, right? When you first get there and they're just standing there and they're still kind of setting up, or, you know, they're still just sort of organizing their business cards, that's a great opportunity to talk to them. The second they get a client, you thank them for their time. You take their card, and maybe that's someone that you'll reach out to a different time. So I want to offer you my tips on how to reach out to fabric manufacturers. And this is based on my experience, and it's not to discount anyone else's experience. So upon first communication, get to the point without the fluff. They don't need to know that you were inspired by fashion when you were 5 years old, flipping through a Cosmopolitan magazine in the waiting room at a dentist's office. They don't need to know. Edit yourself. Edit how much you tell them. Simply state what you are making, what type of meterage you're hoping for, and if they are available for the season you're designing for. Then allow them to take the lead. Let them tell you about their brand. Let them tell you about their manufacturing company. Let them tell you what their requirements are. And this is where you'll start to build a relationship. You get to decide if you'll be a match or not. Be open to the fact that this supplier might not be the supplier you work with, or the supplier you dream of working with might not be your right now supplier. Remember, there is an internet full of advice, and you have to take it all with a grain of salt, and really you're going to have your own experiences. Learn from them, allow them to be lessons for you, and don't let them break you down or make you feel insecure about being a new brand or being a small brand or only wanting small quantities. It's okay to be small. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to be new. I think there's a lot of pride in being a smaller brand. So leave a comment below if you have any questions, if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you Friday. Or in their, what's that word? In their showroom.